Have you ever wondered what sets apart companies at scale right from startup from those who don't? Well, the Genius at Scale podcast is here to answer that question. I interview CEOs from scaling companies and explore the counterintuitive practices that help them grow in ways that other companies don't. We'll also explore the biggest mistakes that almost wrecked them. Hi, I'm John Hitler. I'm a 9-time company founder and CEO. Now I coach CEOs in scaling companies. We'll be joined by these visionary leaders who've defied convention, challenged the status quo, and redefined the very essence of scaling. This is Genius at Scale. Hello and welcome back to Genius at Scale. Today's guest is Richard Potter from Peak AI. Richard, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey John, thanks for having me. So I am one of the co-founders and the CEO of a business called Peak. We're an AI platform, specifically an AI application platform that different businesses, particularly retailers, manufacturing businesses, B2B businesses use to optimize key business processes using artificial intelligence and at scale. So, for example, you will find us in a lot of retailers and branded companies that you'll know using our software to optimize their inventories, optimize their pricing processes, optimizing how they distribute and sell their products. We think it's a really hot space, a really next generation software business that we're building, and one that's going to be very important to the world in the future.
So fascinating. How much does it touch the customer, or is it more about logistics?
Actually, both, because the thing that unites almost all of our customers is that they are managing physical product inventories. That's why we have, retail customers, manufacturing customers, B2B, wholesale customers, and that inventory they're holding at risk. If you think about it, they speculatively accumulate that and sell it. So, in order to make a profit, they have to be great at, first of all, procuring the right amounts of product, putting it in the right place at the right time, always having enough of it so they always make a sale, never miss a sale, they're not overstocked or whatever. But in dealing with your inventory situation, you've got to be great at pricing it, you've got to be good at sourcing it, you've got to be good at distributing it, you've also got to be really good at selling it. And the vision for Peak is that we become the de facto AI platform that houses every company's AI that's running those processes, and then optimizes the decision making in those businesses for profit and growth. So absolutely, our software touches the end consumer a lot, because what you end up, if you like, touching as a customer could be a product recommendation, it could be an offer, it could be a price, or even just the product itself. But equally, of course, the day-to-day users of our software is the business teams in our customers' companies who are running all those processes and managing their own business.
Wow. So AI today is different than AI maybe when you started. I'm talking how you got there, because 3 years ago it was the Stone Age in AI.
We're definitely in the hype cycle with artificial intelligence, aren't we? Which is fantastic for us. I mean, we started quite a while ago. We got our seed funding in 2016, and the vision for Peak then is the vision for Peak now. Companies who use data well, particularly use data to automate and optimize processes using machine learning and AI, are going to be the ones that win in the future, and that was always our vision. It's taken us quite a few years to reach sort of the scale that we are now, with a fully rounded out platform that represents the vision we have for the company, and then all of a sudden comes along generative AI. The traditional apps that sit on the Peak platform are what we would now call predictive AI applications. Then Gen AI comes along and creates a really huge wave of optimism for the technology and puts it right into the public consciousness, which has been really, really great for us. And of course, we're embedding a lot of Gen AI technologies into our platform too, and fusing that predictive AI with generative AI, and it's offered us another innovation wave in itself. But yeah, I think we got there first, but first mover advantage is not relevant if you don't take advantage of it yourself. So our goal is to, maybe as Peter Thiel said, the last mover advantage is the important one here. And we think if we've got the right product in the right place at the right time, we're going to have a really busy and successful few years ahead.
So you're
You've been there for about 8 years. Obviously, you've scaled, which is fabulous. Walk me through the peaks and the plateaus and your scaling journey, if you would.
Yeah, well, I would say we've had two sort of waves of scale, and I would say we're actually in the early stages of the second one almost, if that makes sense. So at the inception of Peak was a really simple idea. It was simple when you look back on it now, which was exactly what I said. Companies that harness data well and make great decisions because of that are going to be more successful than ones that don't. And it was amazing to me and my co-founders that more companies didn't do that back when we started the business. So we started to explore the barriers, like what are the barriers to this? Why do companies not do it? And there's lots of barriers, right? There's cultural ones, skills gaps, technology, and a bunch of other stuff. And back then, cloud data warehouses and data lakes and so on, they weren't really a thing. Even so, data maturity in itself and even a transition to the cloud has moved on a lot since we started Peak. And we were having to convince people that, run your business using our AI in the cloud, yet lots of companies were too scared just to put their data in the cloud or key business applications. So we were a little bit ahead of time there. But the first sort of, I would say, like that first catalyst came from, early adopters before AI had crossed the chasm in most businesses, right? And the people who were buying at that point in time in the industry cycle, those early adopters, are buying on promise and hope and excitement and so on. And I think of them as the folks who go, and we were just, before the show started recording, we were talking about the Super Bowl, to think of like those football fans or soccer fans who are going out and buying a 3D TV before the big game, like because they think it's going to be the next big thing, and then a few years down the line, like no one's got 3D TVs. So we got this huge boost, this early boost from people who were just like, oh, AI, cool, how does that work? 9 out of 10 people didn't want to buy, didn't want to hear it. But the 1 out of 10, it was very easy to sell to them because they just got hooked on the vision and the promise. Then what's happened over time is that your early adopters have dried up in a sense. We've gone mainstream, and now we've crossed the chasm. I would say mainstream buyers want something else. It's a fully rounded product offering they want. They're going to compare you to lots of different companies, and they have really different buying processes and practices. So while we will have some visionary customers who buy from us still, the mainstream wants something different. And where we're at as a company now is we like I said before, we feel like we've got a fully rounded out product, and the vision for Peak is manifest in it, and it does exactly what it needs to do to make our customers successful. So we're now getting this second wave of scaling and growth, which is, I guess, bedrocked on a much stronger product foundation, a real market demand that is there because AI has gone mainstream, and then our own ability to execute on that is much stronger than it ever has been. So it's been interesting so far. And then I think this second, like if you like, growth wave and acceleration wave that we're on right now is going to be the one that hopefully sees us win the whole category. So yeah, let's see.
So is the second wave the 9 and 10 that weren't the early adopters that are now fearful that they could fall behind? And so you're calling mainstream. Is the market coming to you now?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen a lot of market pull, and I think if we're thinking about chasm theory and Geoffrey Moore's writing in this case, what he would say is once it's crossed the chasm, you've still got you're past the early adopter wave, but you're into the early majority. So the early majority are still taking a bit of a bet. They're still focused on growth, opportunity, and future. They're not buying for negative reasons. They're not buying because of FOMO, and they're not buying because they think that, oh my God, my competitor's done it, I've got to catch up. They are still buying for opportunity. So therefore, we are still selling on that opportunity, selling on that value, and selling on excitement. That would naturally change as an industry matures and a category gets well established. And at some point in the future, you're not going to be able to run a company at scale without an AI platform and without an AI that helps you do it. For a lot of companies, that reality might be 10 years away. For our customers, it's here and it right now in front of them.
Right. And that's just because retail moves so fast?
Well, yeah, I mean, so from a retail perspective, retail has moved a bit quicker than, your sort of B2B and sort of manufacturing companies, but now those are the ones that are moving quickly too. Retail moves faster actually just because it's a really great place to apply artificial intelligence. I mean, you have a lot of data. You typically have this fast response mechanism, so it's a high transaction business. And it's also complex, and it's been getting more and more complicated because, we have omnichannel businesses that are selling online, in store, and you have complex logistics and supply chain models to try and optimize too, and it's just way more complicated than like spreadsheets and traditional systems can handle. So the fact that you have the data, you can make the money, there's processes to optimize, and a lot of those businesses are fairly digital savvy because they've had to open a digital storefront, has meant that retail has been slightly ahead of other businesses and other industries, whereas now those other ones are catching up. So I think we'll see it as a trend across all sectors, but particularly those ones that are data rich and have this fast response mechanism, like I change this thing, I optimize this process, I start to monetize. Not all businesses are like that.
Yeah. So you're a co-founder, multiple co-founders, or just two?
There's three of us actually, which I think is a good number. Slightly biased by my own experience, but yeah, we have me. I'm a little bit more commercial. I also was an analyst back in the day, and I understand data. So I have that side of me that brings those skills. Atul, who's our CTO, is the technical co-founder and the data and tech brain behind the Peak platform, particularly as we built it originally before we extended a lot of the AI components on top. So you've sort of got commercial, technical, and then Dave, who's the third co-founder. He's now our CIO, but in the past was our chief operating officer. Basically, he gets everything done. So you've kind of got an ideas guy, a tech guy, and then the guy who makes everyone do stuff and get it done. And that has worked really well as a trio over the years.
I'm fascinated with how has the scaling of either the leadership team or especially the CEO role led, mirrored, or lagged behind the scaling of the company?
Well, that is a very, very interesting question. So I would say it led the company early. So one of the big things we got right in the early days is I actually invested in a sort of management team first, which isn't necessarily a commonly held belief. A lot of founders try to do everything themselves. I always think that I don't want to become the bottleneck, and I'm fairly sure there are a lot of people out there who are smarter than me. So we realized when we figured out the type of business we wanted to be, we hired very smart generalists who became almost like extra co-founders, if you like, but we clearly segmented the responsibilities across the business, and that allowed us to scale much faster, and we had this high trust. This is obviously pre-COVID, so we were working in the office together every day, 5 days a week, so you could move really quickly, share information fast, and that allowed us to scale through at least the first couple of million ARR very, very quickly, and built and have this really tight connection between everything that everyone was doing across all the teams. We drifted for sure, actually, when we went through massive scale. So if we fast forward from that point to our last funding round, which was in 2021, that was a Series C round that SoftBank led. It was a big round for us, and that was just before the tech crash happened, actually. So back end of 21, obviously the technology crash happened in April, May 22. So we spent a lot of time back end of 21, early 22, scaling the whole business. So we hired more than 100 people in Q1 of 22. And what I would say is that I didn't recognize this. This is a commonly held belief, and I disagreed with it and was probably wrong. That as SaaS businesses scale sort of exponentially, individuals generally only have the ability to grow sort of incrementally, and often can go horizontal when you reach a certain scale. And that's not to mean that they're not good at their job, or they're the wrong, they're a bad person, or they've stopped trying or something like that. But the role gets exponentially more complicated while we're sort of growing sort of more slowly as an individual. I always thought well, if a founder can do it, why can't everybody else? And I think what we've seen over the years is some key people, who are very key people to Peak, have managed to scale exponentially, but not everybody has. And me getting the balance right of where do I bring in talent who has been on that journey and knows what it looks like and can get us from this point to this point and get that team in ahead of time. versus being reactive to us falling behind. So I'd say early on we really nailed it and we were ahead of the scale. We scaled so successfully and quickly that we then fell behind, and now I've gone through a period of sort of rebuild, which is a combination of just recognizing that we needed to improve as a leadership team, but then equally also deal with the technology downturn, which has resulted in us rethinking how we operate, restructuring the business to a certain extent, and then alongside that mapping the exec roles to that again in a much clearer way with strong accountability for each business area, and now I'd say we're ahead of the curve again.
So I'm fascinated with this especially the human dynamic, because you're right, human beings generally can't take those huge leaps. How have either the core values or the founding values changed or evolved from 3 co-founders in a garage to you're 500 people now or something like that? I mean, can you use the same ones?
Yeah, we do actually. We lost one, funnily enough. We started off with something I'm really proud of. I think we have a really authentic culture at Peak. We have this dual mission, right? The first part of our mission is to democratize artificial intelligence so that all businesses can take advantage of the benefits it will bring them.
Yep.
The second is to build a company that everyone loves being part of. And we don't just mean like our staff and our team. We also mean like all stakeholders, right? Customers should love it, shareholders, other people around us, our friends, our families, the community as well. But obviously, first and foremost, we do mean our team, because we spend most of our time at work, and we want to enjoy our time at work. And we've written that into our mission statement. That's never changed. And then we took the time, Dave and myself, actually, before we'd even incorporated the company, to write down exactly what we thought great looked like. What does a great company look like? What is a great company culture? It was like a fairly verbose paragraph, but in that we teased out 6 key values, and those 6 values then went on to define everything that we built. And as we scaled, we turned like individual values into values and behaviors. Over the years, we added on principles, because we found that we were operating to certain unwritten rules that weren't values. They were just things we did, like aim for great, not good. Or always starting with the end in mind if you're solving a problem and stuff like that. They're not values, they're principles as to where you approach things. So we've got this strongly codified culture that's got the mission, the vision of the company. It then goes into the principles, the values, and what we're here to do. And it hasn't changed. The only thing that happened is that 2 of our original 6 values were pretty similar, so we combined them into one, made it a bit easier for people to remember 5 than 6. But generally speaking, it hasn't changed. One thing that happened though over time, this is really interesting. We scaled very well, particularly on that first wave, with a really true and authentic culture. Then when we went through this sort of hyperscale period that I described, sort of early 2022, and then through 22, we stopped delivering on our mission from a cultural perspective. And I've talked to the business a lot about this. Our culture drifted. And the culture drifted because one of our principles is that we aim for sustainable high performance. So for me, it's not okay to burn people out and treat people as like human capital. We're not trying to be one of those startups. What we're trying to be is a business that you can be part of for a long, long time, and that we win. We do the things we're going to say we're going to do, and we're successful. But it's sustainable, and we don't want to burn out. We don't want to have to give up, and all of those kinds of things. Actually, what happened is we over-indexed on the sustainable and under-indexed on the high performance. And if you look back now at the tech crash, maybe some of this is macro-driven. We had a difficult year in 2022, and I attribute that to a bit of culture drift. There was a lot of newness in the business, or a lot of sort of short-tenured colleagues, and it takes time to like assimilate, to get up to speed, to learn a business, to learn its culture, its values, and so on. And that caused a bit of drift, and now we're through that now for sure. We've got it back. So I would say that while we've had our culture well codified, communicated, recruited to, rewarded to, like, it's not like being perfect the whole way. We've learned along the way that you've got to do more than just repeat. You've always got to check that you are delivering what you say you're going to do.
What did that look like? Complacency? When you drifted a little?
No, not complacency, but a disconnect. I would say a disconnect between, say, if the founders are the effectively the guy, the spirit animals in setting culture in a startup, then the exec team are then the closest thing. Culture starts from the top, right? But then the business got bigger with leaders leading leaders, and I would say the team on the ground that grew so fast, and some middle managers who were either newly hired or first-time leaders. There was a disconnect between how you deliver the culture that we wanted here and we'd always set and what was actually happening on the ground. And the best way I would characterize that is when you've got a business that's got this dual purpose like Peak, we've got a business goal and then we've got a goal for ourselves, which is creating a business that we all love being part of. The thing that people can resonate with the most early in their tenure is the second part. Like, do I like this place? And it went from being a business where people took responsibility for the culture and saw it as their own business, that they shape the culture, to one where the culture happens to me. I'm a recipient of the culture. And that's not the case here at Peak. Driven and responsible are two of our values, and a big part of that is we've got the drive to do a great job all the time, but we take responsibility for it. We also take responsibility for the culture. And the way in which we've corrected it is, obviously a lot of our leaders now have got more experience. We've also recruited in people with more experience, and we've just really tried to foster a much stronger connection top to bottom and make sure there's a consistently delivered experience for everybody. But it's also been really made clear to everyone that we all contribute to the Peak culture. The Peak culture isn't something that you experience and you're a recipient of. It's something you contribute to and you create for others. I think that's just one of the pitfalls of scaling that fast. And I often wonder when I see a lot of, tech companies scale really quick, doubling in size from, let's just say, 5,000 to 10,000 employees in a couple of years, how they avoid that drift. When we saw that drift between, 200 and 300 employees. Now we're much more efficient and we're running leaner, actually, so we're back down to sort of 200, 250 in our team. It's hard when you're adding that much newness into a business to be culturally pure.
My largest client in COVID was adding 2,200 employees a year. I was like, how do you even find them?
And they would be remote, right, as well, if it's during COVID. So even harder to bring it all together.
Yeah, they had very ingenious systems. One of which was they couldn't have HR review. If you figure you get 50 resumes electronically for every that's 110,000 applications they've got to deal with, and you can't just ignore them. So what they did was they get an auto response that said, "Oh, Richard, we're glad you applied. First step, please do a 90-second video, nothing fancy. It can be on your phone. You don't have to get dressed for it. And pick any of these 4 topics and address it." And what they did was they brought in high schoolers and community college kids and developed a 4-credit psychology course. And their job was to watch these videos. But what they did was they said, you have to watch them with the sound off. Because what they realized is people can con you if they speak. And so if they watch you and you look like you're on drugs, the other thing is they said, we can only handle 1 of 7. So every block of 7, you can only pass 1 of the 7. So they'd watch 7 without the video. And the obvious, as they called them, crazies, they never even turned on the sound. They just say out, and it would get an auto response saying, thanks for applying. But they only do 1 in 7 just to get it down. And I thought, this is brilliant. And what happened is at 30 seconds, they could turn if they thought you were a decent candidate, like you look good on, then they could turn the sound on. If you were still introducing your 53 cats from your cat collection or explaining why you love high-powered rifles in your garage, then they'd say, that guy's out. Once they heard you speak. It was a brilliant system. And I thought, because they're all about optimizing, and I thought, yeah, how would you hire, find, recruit? Who would you even know to interview of? And they brought these people on, and the cultural fit was pretty darn good. And I thought, but they had to invent that. And I thought, very, very creative CEO. And he was the one who said, we've got to solve this not through HR practices, because HR practices are linear and compliant. And he said, we can't do linear compliant. We've got to bring on these people, and they've got to be really, really good. It helped that they were the fourth highest paying country in the United States for,
Okay.
yeah. So that helped because people wanted to work there, but they had no interest in building a feel good. It was all about, we got crap to do. If you come here, you'll love it, but you're going to work, and you're going to love it because you like the work. You're not going to love it because we're going to pamper you. And so they built it even in their hiring, and it was fascinating. So, oh well, there's lots of different ways to do it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, well, at that sort of scale, fascinating. And even that first filter of getting the reply and asking for the video is, it is a gate, right? Which helps filter people out. Do you really want the job?
Yeah, they didn't start with that, but they had to get people that wanted to be there, and the pay was enticing. So that was the problem. They were getting lots of people saying, "Wow, this is the highest one I found. I want that one," and they were terrible fits because they wanted a country club, not a compelling mission. So I'm fascinated with the idea of what I would call unteachable talents that actually scale, because there's some unteachable talents, perfect pitch, that's great, you can sing, but that's not going to help you scale. Curious if, now that you've done this, if there were unteachable talents that you wish you had in the co-founder group that would have helped you scale.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, let me think about that. So I think, in the co-founder group, we had a really good set of complementary skills there.
That's helpful.
And natural go-tos, which I think was one of our reasons for success. And I often do say to people, don't go it alone. Do have a co-founder, at least one, preferably two, for that reason, because there's just a lot more to fall back on, and you can help each other through. I think the thing that I wish maybe we had as we've approached certain scale, so I'm thinking about the things that we've had to relearn, learn and then rebuild, was we were very strong at selling in the early days. And I think you would characterize it as, we're an enterprise software company, right? So it's relatively large ACVs, and important customers, and all customers are important, but you know what I mean. It's fewer transactions, but are bigger deals, basically. And I think we were quite strong at founder-led sales. I was more commercially leaning out of the three of us. So in the early days, a lot of why we were successful was sort of we didn't really know why, because I don't necessarily overanalyze things. I think more, this should work, let's try it, let's do it, let's go, let's do next, and we go and we be successful, and we keep winning. Now I think we made two errors when we were trying to go from founder-led sales as a software company to product-led sales, let's just say. The first was we maybe questioned a little bit too much the things that we were good at when we shouldn't have done. So I think about, we've gone through learnings of our commercial model, we changed it, and we changed it, and we've changed it, and it's actually today very similar to what it was 4 or 5 years ago when we were early stages of growing really fast. And I think what that was there maybe an instinct that we couldn't quite quantify, and we hadn't analysed to death, but we had a commercial model that our customers liked, and it worked really well, and it was at the right price point, and everything tied together. But we just knew that because we got it, and it was in our guts. But we hadn't we didn't have loads of data to prove it. Yeah. Basically, we just got it right first time, and now we've gone back through and tried a few different things, and we've come back to something that looks very similar. I would love to have been able to have the experience to trust my gut a little bit more as we scaled and said, right, no, I've done this before, I've scaled these companies before, don't change these things. Don't change the things that are working, change the things that aren't working, and keep going and build on those. And I think if I had that experience, that would have been really beneficial. And then the second thing is that we're at a certain size and scale now where it makes a difference to just have really great operators. If you listen to Frank Slootman, who says being operationally excellent can be a strategic advantage because so many companies are not operationally excellent. And I think I now would see that he is totally correct. When you're really trying to scale in a big way, you've just got to be on it with everything all the time, and every detail is really important. That takes a certain mindset. It also takes a certain experience as well. You kind of can't teach that. You have to have gone through the mill. Even Frank Slootman's a really good example. If you listen to his biography or his books, he's had many management roles before he becomes CEO. So he's progressed through being the operator archetype. I think that you can't teach it, and B, really, really need it. And so if I look at our founder group, we love the newness, we love the excitement. We're the founders. This is the mission. The mission excites us. And then establishing a really strong operational capability is something that I kind of wish we had in that founder group in that sense, but we didn't, and we do now. And I will look to harness more of that in the future. But I actually think, interestingly, I've seen a lot of startups kind of hit the buffers when they've been too operationally focused early on. You need to invent. You need your moment of creation, and then optimizing from that invention onwards if you really want to scale as a software company. So you need both, really, I guess. And at different points in time, different things become more important. But I would say that that drive, that operational drive, if we had that earlier on in our exec team, that would have made a big difference.
Yeah, it's funny when you're a band of brothers. Yeah, just, like you say, you have to do everything. So how do you do it? How do you check yourself? Yeah, that's a hard thing. Going with your gut is. And
also, it's interesting. The other thing it leads to is sometimes you don't hold people to account brilliantly. And I would say this is something I'm guilty of. I have been guilty of as CEO. Because everything is best endeavours. When you're the band of brothers, the ones who are starting it, it goes wrong sometimes, and you don't shout at each other if it goes wrong. You just try and fix it and move on. And but when you scale and you're trying to build an operation that is scalable, you do actually need a strong culture of accountability and hold each other to account. And because otherwise it sort of collapses. And I think founders can be quite bad at that, to be honest. And I think we would hold our hands up and say we were.
Yeah, that's the unteachable piece is it's actually the focus of my next book. I'm convinced there are probably a handful, maybe 6, but I don't know necessarily. And founders and CEOs know what they are because they have to do everything. And then where the gaps show up, they say, "Boy, it sure would have been good to trust my gut." That's an amazing one. Because usually there's a lot of studies on your gut is more, even without data, your gut is more accurate than all the analysis and all the data usually. Because at least you have
I think that gut instinct is a data-driven decision. It's just we're not articulating the data. We just feel it because we've seen it.
Right.
And we are synthesizing data, and we're dealing in the grey, not dealing in black and white. And so you can over-index and try to look for perfect answers all the time, but sometimes you have to trust your gut, right? So. Yeah.
You talked about challenges. I'm curious, what's been fun about? Obviously you have to solve problems, and there's challenges every day, and because people talk about like it's a fight or a war, but I'm sure there's been fun things too. What have you really enjoyed about scaling, Pete?
Well, now that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, let's just say from a technology downturn point of view, I don't think we're totally out of the woods as a sector yet, but we're getting there. We start to feel more optimistic again, so that helps you think about the good things more than the bad things. But there's just so many good things. Specific to Peak, we set out to do 2 things. We've got some of the world's biggest brands and companies like Nike and Ralph Lauren using our software day to day in very important decision making, and we were ahead of our time, and we hope to stay ahead of our time. And that is an immense source of pride to see our software being used by some of the world's best businesses. It's really cool. And then the other thing that's really, again, specific to Peak is that other side of the mission I mentioned, building a business we all love being part of. It's fantastic to come to work every day with really talented, smart people who make you laugh, who are fun to be around, who are energy givers, not energy takers, and all the things that we would want a peak person to be. And those things are the fun things. And you have certain results, right? A particular renewal that you really wanted to get done with a customer, or a new logo, or a funding event, or even when it comes to certain company celebrations, and those things you look back on as being highlights. But it's a lot of fun, and you get up in the morning and come to work because you love it. If you didn't love it, you wouldn't do it, I think. So I'd say we have more fun than we do hard times.
That's great. What should I have asked you about scale that I didn't? Or scaling?
I think this might be more specific to artificial intelligence companies like us than they are broader learnings, but a lot of people fail to get the unit economics of AI companies working in the same way that they do for traditional SaaS businesses, should we say. And there's lots of reasons for that, but the main reason is heavy compute, the need for data, and then the lack of expertise on end customer side, the need to have them all on your side, and then just like the nuances of AI first software, the need to stay on top of models, retrain them, blah blah, all this kind of stuff. So I think one question could have been like, we've scaled with really strong SaaS unit economics as an AI first company, and how have we managed to do that versus a lot of companies who've not managed to do that. And there's a few things that we've pulled off that have got us to this position. Some of them are really straightforward, like business school things, like natural competitive advantages. Like I'm here in Manchester in the UK. My co-founder Atul is in Jaipur in India, and we have two big R&D offices in India. And we do a lot of our data science and AI engineering here in Manchester. So if you compare us to a Silicon Valley startup, first of all, like our cost base is, for the same number of resources, for the same talent, is orders of magnitude different. And that helps massively. So basic stuff like that in a funny sort of way. All the way through just having an obsession with like trying to turn everything that you could do as a science project, as a data scientist, into software to make the business more and more and more scalable. That's how we've pulled that off. But that's a little bit more specific to an AI company vis-a-vis like general advice. But maybe the general learnings are, if you have natural, I would say structural advantages like we do from a cost-based perspective, think about how you can really take advantage of those in a way that gives you something extra that helps you like escape your competition. And we have, for our scale, and twice the number of people that you would have if you were based on the west coast of the United States, and our cost, per head cost base will be probably like a fifth or a sixth on average. So these sort of things can be real meaningful things as you're looking to get acceleration and win a market, right?
So you don't need to raise $7 trillion like Sam Altman. You just need like 2 trillion or maybe 2.5 trillion. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that we can take advantage of some of his fundraising by embedding OpenAI technology into Peak.
I've done a couple of forums already about this, and the insane thing is not that he's asking for 7 trillion. The insane thing is he'll probably get it. That's just absolutely mind-boggling that he could make that request and probably figure it out and get it and go. So, oh well.
Well, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because if it's and I think this is the problem, it's a little bit like the internet's open, and that's why technology's done so well since the dawn of the internet era. The danger we've got with AI, if AI is a platform shift from the internet to the next platform, we need to make sure that AI platform is open, which poses a lot of risks, which people are rightly paying attention to. Do those risks outweigh the other risks of making it a closed platform and imagine the internet was closed and we only had one internet provider for the whole of the world? I think I know which one I would prefer, and therefore we have to make sure that while it does cost a lot of money to invest in the foundational layer, we can't just have it that 3, 4, 5 companies who are the biggest companies already with so
yep.
much cash are the ones that are being the kingmakers and saying, like, you know, you and you're going to run the future internet. That's pretty scary, I think.
It is. Yeah, fascinating discussion. I'd love to bring you back for another session. There's a whole lot more, but for now, to our viewers, thank you for joining us. And Richard, thank you for appearing today on Genius at Scale. All the best.
Thanks for joining me on another powerful episode of Genius at Scale. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to continue your journey into the world of scaling, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review and let the world know how the insights of these amazing CEOs helped you. Also, if you're hungry to discover more counterintuitive strategies to scale your business, don't forget to grab a copy of my book, The Little Book of Big Scale, where I've compiled the wisdom and insights from CEOs who have successfully scaled their companies against all odds. Or you can go to our website, www.evokinggenius.com/book. Thanks again for tuning in. Go forth and scale.